just 2.5 years into his term, and President Trump is reshaping the federal bench. He's appointed more than 100 federal judges, including 2 Supreme Court justices and more than 30 circuit court judges. His conservative nominees are changing the makeup of some of the most influential courts in the country. Just this past month, the Republican-led Senate confirmed 2 of the president's nominees to California's powerful and historically liberal Ninth Circuit Court. The Ninth Circuit Court has incurred the president's wrath for blocking some of his executive orders, including the travel ban on several Muslim-majority countries. And the Third Circuit Court of Appeals in Detroit has flipped from a Democrat-appointed majority court to a Republican majority under President Trump. Regardless of the president's political future, the legal legacy will last for decades. Michael Waldman is a constitutional lawyer and president of the Brennan Center for Justice. Nice to see you.
Great to see you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So isn't it just a basic truism that Democrats appoint more progressive judges, Republicans appoint more conservative judges, and in spite of all the everybody's fair and no one, ever really thinks the judges aren't political, that's true?
Some judges are more progressive, some are more conservative, and you can often tell where they're going to be by who nominated them. Throughout history, though, we've had a fact that judges often will migrate, will evolve on the bench when they get up there. And what's new, what's different, is there's been a really focused and very effective campaign, in this instance by conservatives, to place on the federal bench very conservative and kind of ideologically predictable judges.
So is the issue the pace?
Some of it is that this president, with the Senate of the same party, is filling up the federal judiciary at a very torrid pace, at a very rapid pace.
Faster than other presidents have done historically, or no?
Faster than other recent presidents have had the chance to do at the beginning of their term, without a doubt. And part of that is because Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, used every kind of hardball political tactic he had and broke a lot of the norms, did new things that people thought you weren't supposed to do or hadn't been done, to hold off on confirming President Obama's judicial nominees, including for the Supreme Court. So that when
Merrick Garland, everyone throws back to. How come President Obama didn't fight harder for that?
Well, the situation right now is a product of a very aggressive stance by the Republican Party and a complete wimping out by the Democratic Party. When President Obama nominated Merrick Garland, in every other similar instance, there would be at least a hearing on the nominee. There wasn't. McConnell blocked it, and President Obama didn't say a word. There was no political fight from the White House. There was no political fight from the other Democrats. It's been the case, for whatever reason, in recent years and actually recent decades, that conservative voters and conservatives take the courts a lot more seriously than progressives have. And I think that's probably changing, partly because the courts are changing.
Are the courts out of alignment with the demographics of America?
The Trump nominees for courts are 70% white men. Well, white men are about 30% of the country. And while other things are changing, while Congress is changing, the courts are lifetime appointments, and they can kind of lock into place an older way, a backwards-looking way of looking at things. And so you even have something on an issue like guns. The Supreme Court didn't rule that the Second Amendment reflected an individual right to gun ownership till 2008. That was the first time that happened. But now it's the interpretation of the Constitution. And even as the country turns more strongly toward gun control, the courts are going to turn more strongly against it. So you can have a real conflict going forward between the people and the judges.
And what do you think, play that out for me, if you have a conflict between the people and the judges, what happens? It's
happened a lot in the past, and it becomes a big political fight. It becomes something people fight out their elections over. And it's true that judges live in the same world the rest of us do. They're very aware of and attentive to kind of public opinion, whether they say they are or not. As you know, John Roberts, the Chief Justice, he is very sensitive to, they call him an institutionalist. He thinks a lot about the Supreme Court and its legitimacy. and its ability to get people to listen to its rulings. You know, if you think about it, courts, they don't have, President Andrew Jackson, there was a ruling by the Supreme Court that he didn't like, and he said, fine, let them enforce it. You know, the courts ultimately depend on all of the rest of us
Believing that it comes from an honest place.
Yeah, exactly.
Michael Waldman from the Brennan Center. Nice to see you. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.